Flowers by the Bunch. Happy Tuesday. I am so excited to be here today. Today we are going to work on a wreath, a spring wreath. I have got a grapevine wreath that we're going to work with, and this is just a regular grapevine wreath that you can get at any craft store. I even think Walmart's carrying them, or you can come by the flower shop. We have them on hand, but this is just a regular grapevine wreath. I think it's about an 18-inch grapevine wreath. They come in lots of different sizes, but today I am going to work with an 18-inch grapevine wreath. When you come on, tell me hello. Tell me how you're doing today. Tell me where you're from. I always like to know where everybody's from. So I put out a little question whether you wanted to see a fresh arrangement, another fresh arrangement, or if you wanted to see me use some cute little hearts that I found at I found it at a little antique shop over in West Point, Mississippi, and I just thought they were the cutest things. And so they're just little wooden hearts, and they're kind of whitewashed, but they have a little bit of color, not a whole lot. But it's just going to be something fun to add to a wreath. So today we are going to do a spring wreath that's going to be kind of Valentine, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I am going to start with adding my greenery. I actually had a flower truck come by today, and on the truck they had this really pretty garland. So this is just, it's actually just a garland, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little picks of greenery on it. So what I'm going to do is, instead of buying a whole lot of individual picks, I thought that it was more cost effective just to buy a garland that I'm going to cut up. So I'm just going to take some wire snips, and I'm going to cut several pieces off of this garland. And it's got some little pods. I'm actually just going to go ahead and cut the whole garland up. I'm not going to use it all on this wreath, but you might as well have it in the pieces. And so this actually has several little pods on it. It has several different varieties of foliage. So you can actually take it apart and use it, take it completely apart and use it in different parts. I'm just going to use it in these little bundles, and I'm going to start out. So this wreath behind me, what I did here, I'm going to basically do about the same thing. I started and did one side, and then I put one little tuck of flowers up here. I'm going to do about the same thing for this one. And so I'm going to start out by adding just a little bit of greenery here, and then put a little touch up here in the corner. So instead of using hot glue for my foliage, I'm going to take my foliage, and I'm just going to lay it right onto my wreath, just like this. I'm going to take a little piece of wire. This is just florist wire. I'm actually going to use some longer pieces because the smaller it is, the harder it is to handle. So these are just florist wires that I've cut in half. And I'm going to just take them and just wire this foliage right onto this grapevine wreath. And I'm going to be sure to kind of work down into that bush or that little stem so that it won't just slide off. So I'm just going to twist that wire just like you would a bread tie. I'm just twisting that wire so it's on my wreath, okay? And I'm going to kind of spread it out, and then I'm going to take another piece just like that. I'm going to trim it up just a little bit because I don't want all that stem to show. And I'm going to lay it opposite, just like this, onto that wreath. And I'm going to wire it right in. And I'm just taking my wire and running it in between some of those little pieces of that grapevine. And I'm just wiring it directly to the wreath. Now the reason I am using wire is because this green wire doesn't show as badly as like a zip tie. You can absolutely use a zip tie. My zip ties are kind of white and so they show up too bad. And I didn't want them to show. I don't want the wire, I don't want it to show. Okay, so there is my greenery on one side. And then I'm going to take another little piece, and I'm going to actually take this one apart. So I'm going to see what I can do. So I pulled it off this stem, and then it'll kind of tear apart just like that. And so I'm going to make it two pieces instead of just the one little bundle of greenery. I'm going to trim it back. I'm going to lay it right on the wreath just like I did over here. And all I'm doing is just taking my wire, running it through this grapevine, and just wiring that greenery right onto that wreath. And then I'm going to take this other piece, and I am just going to kind of put it opposite of that piece. And I'm going to just wire it on also. And really the main thing is you just don't want it to come off. You don't want it to fall off. Now if there are any little pieces of that wire left, I'm just going to trim that back with a little bit. These are just cobalt wire cutters that I got from Lowe's. They're wonderful. And so I'm just taking them and trimming up that wire just so it's not sticking out, because I don't want it to show. Okay. All right, so there's my greenery. And all that was it's actually 3 pieces of that garland, and they had 5 little bushes on the garland. So next I found, this was also on that silk truck. I love the color of this foliage. It's some grasses. I'm not exactly sure what you would call it, but it's pretty. And I like that it's kind of a gray green. It's a little bit of a sage color. It's just really pretty, really springy. So what I'm going to do is, it's got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's got 7 little stems. Okay, I'm going to take it and cut several of those stems, and I'm going to I'm just going to cut them all off. I'm going to tuck those in after I put my flowers in, but I just love the color of this foliage, so I'm going to use that in just a minute. So next what I'm going to do is, this is just a bush. It's soft pinks, it's ivory, kind of white colors. I love this pretty spring colored. It's so, I don't know, it's just so ladylike. Perfect for Easter, perfect for Valentine's Day. It's just pretty. I found this at Hobby Lobby, $13.99 for this bush. And it's got lots of stems on it. And then I also had these pretty tulips. These tulips actually came off my silk truck. But I love those pretty little tulips. So I'm going to actually use both of these in this wreath. And so all I'm going to do is I'm taking my wire snips. Now the reason I like to use a pretty bush is because you get so much for your money. I think it has probably 15 stems of flowers versus 1 or 2 flowers for that same price. And so that's why I like to use a bush. But it's all your preference. If you think it's pretty, buy it. You know, whatever you think. I just love this one. Actually had some dahlias, hydrangeas, some little rosebuds. So I just thought it was very pretty. Now, you don't have to use all these flowers in one wreath if you don't want to. It's all in your preference. Okay, so I'm going to start out, before I begin to permanently put these flowers down into this wreath, I always like to start out with placing my flowers first. Hey, Miss Pat, thank you for being here. I'm so glad you're here. So this is a dahlia, and I'm just going to take these flowers and kind of tuck them in where I think they'll be pretty. And that way, then I kind of have an idea of where I want it. And then I can come back and glue them into my wreath. These little hydrangeas, I'm going to tuck those in. And when I have that, I like to push that foliage up. I like to use the foliage that's on them. If the stem needs to be trimmed, just trim that back with your wire cutters. And so all I'm doing is just kind of working it down into this wreath and putting it where I think it'll be pretty. So you can kind of see how I'm just working it and kind of tucking it in where I think it'll be pretty. This is just a little filler. I'm gonna tuck it in. And then some little rosebuds. So just kind of place it, play with it and place them kind of where you like them. And then what you're gonna do is come back and use your glue and glue them in place. Now, I have gotten to over the years where I can just go ahead and glue directly, but I find that as you start out, this is the easiest way to make a wreath, is to place it first and then come back and glue it. I just find it's less trying to pull it out and then put it back in. Okay, so that's that bush. That's one bush, the $13.99 that I got from Hobby Lobby. And then next, these tulips, they're actually just real short stem tulips. I'm going to take them apart. And so they're individual little stems, okay? And I'm going to leave those a little longer and tuck those right in. I love this color. It's kind of a rose color, a really pretty rose color. And all I'm doing is I'm just taking them and tucking them in to see exactly where I want them to go. And they're all on wire, so they all kind of have a wire base. So they'll kind of twist and turn and you can kind of manipulate them a little bit to do exactly what you want them to do. All right, so I've got my flowers placed where I want them, okay? So next what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come back and glue them into place. So I have got a hot glue pan. And this is actually a hot glue skillet, and this is actually one that you would actually use to fry stuff at home, okay? And so you can buy them very small. They're on Amazon, and you can purchase them on Amazon. And what we do is you can use glue sticks. We actually have glue pellets, and they're like little tiny pellets. You drop in there, and they melt. The wonderful thing about a glue skillet is you don't have to pick up that gun and glue. You can always just dip it in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start taking these flowers out. So I'm going to start with this dahlia. My stem is a little long, so I'm going to trim it up just a smidge. I'm going to dip it into my glue. If you don't have a glue skillet, you can always use a glue gun. And then I'm going to place that dahlia right back where I had it, okay? So all I'm going to do is just take each flower out of its place, pop it with some glue, and then stick it back into my wreath where I had it, okay? And so with this pan, you're less likely to burn yourself, which is wonderful, but you don't have to have both hands to work. You can actually pull it out, dip it in, kind of manipulate it, hold the wreath. So all I'm doing is just dipping and then sticking it right where I want it into my wreath. And I'm just pulling each stem out individually and then putting it right back where I had it. But they're not very expensive. You can actually, you can buy them on Amazon. I'll be sure to link below where you can purchase it. Like I said, this is actually one that I bought at Walmart. It's a standard size skillet that you would actually fry in at home. But we use it so often, and there might be 2 or 3 of us working at the same time with glue. And so that's why we really like this big one. But the little ones are perfect if you're just a crafter. So you can absolutely purchase those, and they're just so nice. So I'm just pulling each flower out and gluing it right into place. I love those tulips. They're so pretty. Now you have to, the one thing about the glue skillet that I don't love is it puts off all of these little tiny strings, you know, little glue strings, kind of like spider webs. So you kind of have to go back and pull those spider webs off. But I tell you, it's a lot better than burning yourself with that hot glue gun. That hot glue gun is a pain because it burns so bad. Okay, so this whole side has been glued in. So next I'm just going to work on the other side. I'm going to take it and trim up some of these stems. They're a little long. And you'll go back at the end and just make sure that every little stem has been glued in. Knocking stuff off over here. All right, one more stem left. All right, so all of my flowers are glued in, okay? So that's pretty all by itself. It really doesn't need a whole lot more, does it? So next what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and make my bow. I think what I'm going to do, because I don't want this to be just a Valentine wreath. I want you to be able to use it for spring. So you don't have to have your hearts on it all the time, right? And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take my little hearts and I am going to take a piece of wire. Let's see. I'm going to take a longer piece of wire. I'm going to take a piece of wire, and my hearts have just a little twine here. So I am going to just wire. So I've just put it on a piece of wire. Now I want my little hearts to hang down in the center of my wreath, okay? And so just like that, I want my hearts to hang there. But I want you to be able to take those hearts off. So I don't want you to have to be stuck with hearts all of the time. So I'm just going to take them and wire them so that you can unwind this wire, and you can take those off if you want to. So I'm just going to put them, that's why I'm not tying them directly into the bow, so that you can be able to pull these hearts off and add them back on. Okay, so there's my hearts, and next I'm just going to tie a pretty bow. Now, when I was at Hobby Lobby and I bought this bush, I found this pretty floral ribbon. Now, ribbon is all in your preference. You can do any kind of ribbon, but I just thought this really pretty springy colored lady rose ribbon was so pretty. So that's what I'm going to do, is tie a pretty bow to hang right up here at the top. Now, if you want to see how I tie bows, I have done a video on how to tie a bow, and so you can go back and watch that. If you'll go to our page and go to videos, I have it marked bows, how to tie bows. And I think I've done actually 2 different videos for bows. One is Valentine, and then, no, one is Christmas, and then one's early last year, probably in February or March. So that'll kind of teach you. I'll walk you through how to tie this bow, but I just want you to know that that one's a little more lengthy and tells you how to tie different kinds of bows. This is a wired ribbon, and so I'm not going to put the regular center loop. I'm actually just going to start with a long tail and make just several loops. So I've got it held between my pointer finger and my thumb, and I'm going to twist. Now the reason you twist is because this is the front of the ribbon and this is the back. The back's not quite as bright as the front. I'm going to make a loop. I'm holding it between my thumb and my pointer finger, and I'm going to twist. Now you can make as many loops as you'd like, and it's just the same thing, loop, twist, loop, twist. I am actually going to do 5 loops total, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to leave several tails. Now I don't want my tails to cover up my hearts, so I'm not going to leave my tails too long. And you can always trim up your tails, so don't feel like if they get too long, what am I going to do? You always trim that up, okay? Okay, so there's my bow, and I'm going to take a piece of wire, and I'm putting the wire under that thumb, and I'm bending it, and then I'm just going to do a twist on the back just to make sure that it's pretty tight. After I've tied my bow, then I'm going to fluff it up, okay? Now I'm going to take and tie my bow right here above my hearts, and I'm going to cover up where I wired my little hearts onto my wreath. And I'm just twisting that onto the back of the wreath. And then I'm going to take this ribbon The wonderful thing about wired ribbon is it can always, if it gets squished, it can always be fluffed pretty easily. Okay, so there is my wreath, and you can see my little hearts hanging down from the center. Next, what I'm going to do, and just to add a little bit of a finishing touch, is I'm going to take and add in some of this light colored greenery. And the reason I chose to do this last is because your flowers, when you go to glue in all your flowers, they tend to cover up all the pretty greenery. So I'm going to do just like I did with my flowers. I'm going to dip it in glue, and I'm just going to tuck it in where it needs just a little added something. And so you can absolutely do this just like you did your flowers, where you can tuck it in first and then come back and glue it back in. And if you're more comfortable doing it that way, that's perfect. For some reason I can't get that one to hit the, well, glue it again. But see how that's just kind of giving it just a little added something to that wreath. And I always like to take it and just push that foliage up to the top. And you can trim it back. It doesn't have to be this long, but just trim it back with your wire snips. And see how that kind of gives it just a little bit of an added something to your wreath. And then I'm going to put just a little bit over here on this side. Now you can do, your wreaths can be all the way around. They do not have to be one-sided like I made here. You can absolutely do it any way you want to. But this just kind of gives you just a little bit of a how-to. You could do it all the way around. You could do it just one-sided. You can do the bow on the top and the bow on the bottom. You can put as much ribbon in a wreath as you would like. But for this one, I did want a little bit of the grapevine showing, and so that's the reason I did just a little bit on one side and a good bit on the other. But there's our spring wreath that's perfect for Valentine's Day. You can absolutely take these hearts off and put a little bunny rabbit if you wanted to do it for Easter. But it's great just to have have added color on your door. This time of year is so drab, and I always like to have a pretty wreath on my front door just to kind of, it makes me feel better. I feel like I came home to something pretty. Guys, thank you so much for watching our video this afternoon. If you have any questions, let me know. I think this week we may just do door wreaths, and so I'll do something else on Thursday and figure out another something to maybe even a door swag. I hope you have a great afternoon, and I will see you all real soon.